Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1060, and today's date is August 28th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded an interview with Alistair McLeod. It is on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, so you can just go right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there, or you can go to newssentinel.com, same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right, and you can play the video there. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been looking at economic indicators, we've been looking at each of the economic sectors, and we see a pattern emerging here where each one of these, they're deteriorating, they're imploding, they're collapsing. We've been looking at housing quite a bit, and we've noticed something very interesting, that housing is starting to implode. Traffic is drying up, we see prices are coming down, and the mortgage apps are declining. Now, a month ago, we said that the housing market is not looking really good. And we looked at the Hamptons, we looked at New York City, and we noticed that prices are starting to come down. Well, when we look at Aspen, we see that the high-end sales, well, they're starting to completely fall apart. They're evaporating. When we look at Pitkin County, sales volume is down 42% for the first half of the year. Now, this entire market is based on housing prices continually moving up. And we're starting to see the traffic is slowing and prices are starting to come down. Now, in Aspen, the speed of the collapse is unbelievable. Until just last year, the local market was beyond robust. We saw sales hitting about $2 billion in 2015, a 33% annual increase driven by large sales of homes in Aspen. This year, however, the slowdown, which started in January, is in free fall. Sales volume in Pitkin County, they're down 42% right now. And according to the data compiled by Land Title Guaranteed Company, sales in the Aspen Snowmass market in the first half of the year were the bleakest since the first half of 2009. This is showing us once again that the real estate market is falling apart. We look at luxury condo sales in Miami. They have crashed 44%. This is according to the latest report by the Miami Association of Realtors. The local luxury housing market is just as bad. It's actually worse. A closer look at some of these transactions for properties of $1 million or more in July shows just 73 single-family homes, representing an annual decline of 31.8%, according to a new report by Miami Association of Realtors, that this market is falling apart. In the case of condos in the same price range, the number of closed sales fell by an even wider margin, 44% to 45 transactions. In July, townhouses and condos of $1 million or more, well, these people who were trying to sell them, they had to wait an average of 162 days for a buyer to come along. This is everything we've been talking about. And the situation is getting worse. This is going to spread. It's already spreading across the country. If you look around the country, you look out in the east, you look in the southeast, you look in the west, Midwest, we are starting to see in all of these regions the housing market decline and implode in all of these regions. This is what we're seeing right now. It is falling apart. The central bank, they can't do anything. They're out of ammunition. And we have bubbles that are everywhere. We see the bond bubble. It's over 60 trillion in size. This alone means it is more than 5 times the size of the U.S. housing bubble. I mean, think about this for a second. 5 times the size of the U.S. housing bubble. And we know what happened during the housing bubble. How many people it hit. And if we look at this bond bubble, this bubble is global in nature. With 30% of global bond yields in negative territory. And of course, we can thank the central bank for this. On top of all this, because sovereign bonds are the supposed risk-free rate against which all other asset classes are based, well, when sovereign bonds are in a bubble, everything is in a bubble. Corporate bonds, muni bonds, etc. When we add all this up and we calculate it out, the bond bubble is now 199 trillion in size. It is over 2 times the size of global GDP. And we can see right now, this is attached to the derivative market. And the derivative market right now is around 555 trillion in derivatives trading based on bond yields. This is the greatest bubble in history. And we thought the subprime securities was a problem. This is going to be worse. Remember how that unfolded? People started to default. Domino fell. And then that was it. The same thing is going to happen here. When that first domino falls, the whole thing will come crashing down. Just like in 2008. Now, JP Morgan Chase is saying the odds of a recession, well, they're up to 37%. Well, I'm going to say it's much, much higher. But the point of this is that they're warning people now that something is about to happen. There were warnings prior to 2008. There were warnings prior to 2001. There were warnings before the Great Depression of 1929. And we're seeing the same thing happen once again. They're slowly coming out with their warnings, saying something's about to happen. At the same time, the corporate media, the U.S. government, the Fed is trying to convince everyone that everything is okay. And we do get these type of messages because this way they can turn around and say, no, there were people out there saying that something was wrong. We told you back then. It was 37% chance that this is going to go into a recession. Well, we're already in a recession. We're already collapsing. Look what we've been following. Things are rapidly falling apart. And we can see right now, Obama's push to get the TPP, the TTIP, well, that's failing right now. German Vice Chancellor and Economy Minister Sigmar Gabriel said that the free trade talks between the European Union and the United States, well, they've completely failed. Because the people in Europe, they don't want to be subject to American demands. And we see people out there protesting, saying no to the TTIP. They do not want it. And it looks like the Senate right now is saying that they're not even going to look at it this year. And so far, it looks like it's not going to happen. But we'll have to watch that very, very carefully. Now, we've been talking about how this economy, how our country is turning into a fascist country. And John T. Flynn, who written a number of best-selling books back in the 1920s, he reviewed history. And Flynn sums up with a list of many different points of what he considers to be the main marks of a fascist state. And many of his points fit right into what the United States is doing right now. Point 1. The government is totalitarian because it acknowledges no restraint on its powers. Yeah, we can see that. Point 2. Government is a de facto dictatorship based on the leadership principles. Well, we're not a full dictatorship, but we can see the Obama administration, the executive branch, they've been doing things without consulting Congress, without having Congress do things, vote on certain bills, where Obama says, I'm just going to bypass Congress. That is the beginning stages of a dictatorship. Point 3, government administers and capitalist systems with an immense bureaucracy. Well, we definitely see that. Point 4. Producers are organized into cartels in the way of syndicalism. Syndicalists is not usually how we think of our current economic structure, but remember that syndicalism means economic control by the producers. Capitalism is different. It places, by virtue of market structures, all control on the brands of the consumer. In the case of the United States, in the last 3 years, we've seen giant banks, pharmaceutical firms, insurers, car companies, Wall Street banks, brokerage houses, and other corporations. They've been enjoying vast privileges at our expense. So this fits in. Point 5. Government sustains economic life through spending and borrowing. I don't even have to comment on this one. Point 6. Militarism is a mainstay of government spending. Point 7. Military spending has imperialist aims. So when we look at all these different points, we can see the United States is fascist. We are heading in that direction. The majority, to say 90% of the points, we are there. Out in South Sudan, we see 1 year after the United States government, the UN, brokered a peace deal, South Sudan is worse off. There's more fighting, there's more war, because you have to remember how the United States presents peace. You do it our way, or there's going to be war. That is how they push peace in all the different areas. You have to remember, in Yemen, just yesterday, or Friday, I should say, John Kerry, with Saudi Arabia, proposed a peace deal with Yemen. Surrender, give up your lands. That was the peace deal. We see out in Japan, tanks, artillery, and hundreds of troops. They took part in a self-defense force live fire drill near Mount Fuji. The exercise took place a day after North Korea announced they successfully launched a ballistic missile test from a submarine. And we can see right now, this is all about provoking North Korea. It's always been about that. And they're going to continually push because they need a war to begin now. They're running out of time. Out in Syria, out in Iraq, throughout the Middle East, we are seeing that CENTCOM is not reporting on how many civilians they actually killed. Amnesty International, they've gone to CENTCOM and they present them the information, those who were killed, pictures, the bombings. The Pentagon won't even provide them with any criteria of what they actually would want, and they just deny each one of these reports. And they say, no, we can't look at it. This is not what we need. It doesn't work. And we can see why. Because they don't want to report on how many people are actually dying in these wars. When we were invading the Middle Eastern countries, and remember under President Bush, they weren't even allowed to show pictures of the soldiers coming home who died. They don't want people to know. They want people to think that everything is fine. Well, war is not fine. War is horrific. War is destructive. But again, we're heading in that direction, and this is why they're going to be hiding all of it. Now, since Turkey invaded Syria, it looks like Turkey's military operations is making this entire situation in Syria very unpredictable. And we can see right now that the operation in Syria was to cause chaos, to create a buffer zone, a safe zone. And we can see the military zone that they're creating is expanding now in Syria. And of course, it is done on purpose, where they're saying that Turkey is going after the Kurds, Turkey is going after the Islamic State, Turkey is cleaning the entire area. They wanted this to happen. So Turkey had remember, this was planned a long time ago. This whole entire agenda, this whole entire plan was laid out by the Brookings Institute, where they needed to get some type of safe zone. United States France, they were preparing for this. They were building bases because they knew eventually they were going to push this idea. The United States already said no planes in our area over a certain part. Turkey is carving out their safe zone, opening up a corridor. We can see all this is happening all at once. Right now we see that the United States is pushing the chemical weapons from the UN report. They're using it as blackmail. They're trying to put Russia, Syria in a corner to make them do what they really want. We see France's foreign minister is out there saying, listen, we have the UN report on the use of chemical weapons in Syria, and it is a chance to push Russia to accept a resolution condemning the Syrian regime and removing Assad. This is the plan. They believe they have ammo right now to get Assad out of power. And this is where they're moving. And this is why the deal that Lavrov and Kerry were working on, it completely failed. Because right now, the United States government central bankers, their plan is to have Assad removed. They don't want a ceasefire anymore. They don't want peace. They don't want anything. They never wanted that from the beginning. They use that as a stall tactic to rearm, to reset, and to carry out their next plan. And we can see it is unfolding right now. Now again, Russia has always said, listen, the fate of Assad is by his people, not by foreign governments. And Russia is also saying, you're looking at one side of this report. What about your moderate rebels? What about your terrorist groups that have been using chemical weapons? But you're not mentioning that end of it. You're the one who's been providing them with all these chemical weapons. You didn't mention that either. And we can see right now, the U.S. doesn't care. The clock is ticking down. They're running out of time. They're going to make a push. And if it leads to war, world war, I mean, we're already in a world war for all intents and purposes. But for the big bang to go off, they're ready to do this. They're ready to push this because they have run out of time. The economy is failing. We have the perfect storm coming up this fall with the elections. And the whole thing is about to implode. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.